Hi guys, this is Tracey from Lavinia Stamps and I am here with my gel press. I am going to be using our brand new stamps. I'm going to create a lovely background using our watercolour card. I've got a couple of colours here. I've got Mermaid and Flying Fig from our Elements collection. And I've got my braille roller. So I'm going to make a start by just applying some of this gorgeous ink to the gel press. Now it doesn't look like there's much going on there, but don't worry about that. There'll be plenty of ink. And then I'm going to add a little bit of the Flying Fig as well. I'm just going to dot that about, so you can just about see where I put the Flying Fig and the Mermaid there in the background. And what we're going to do now is taking our fan brush, I'm going to pop it in the water, take the large droplets off on the side, and then we want really tiny speckles going on. And this just gives you a really lovely organic background when we take the print. So just keep going with that. Now some of you might find it easier to actually grab the end of a stencil brush and tap and do it this way instead. That's just a little tip anyway. Okay, so we've got lots of water, lots of speckles going on there. Now we're going to grab our lovely watercolour card. Now, should we do it the other way? It's more exciting. Let's pop that down there and we can actually see all that lovely colour. And you can kind of squish it where you want the colour. You can move it, keep on moving it until you feel like you're happy. Okay, so let's just take that off, and we've got that lovely vibrant colour there. Now while it's still wet, I'm just going to dab off an area, and I will explain why shortly. In fact, I'm going to pop a little bit more water on there. You know that the water activates the watercolour inks or elements. So what that does, it brings the ink to the surface. We leave it on there for a bit and then we dab again. You can see how much more that actually bleaches out. So you probably guessed it by now, but this is where we're going to pop the moon. So we want to make it as light as we can so that there's a contrast. So I will explain as we go along. I'm just dabbing up any areas down the bottom here. And then I'm going to dry that off. Okay. Let's just bend that back into shape. That's what's great about this card. It's a good thick card, and it means we can just bend it without creasing it. Back into shape. So next up we will use our lovely fairy. Now I'm going to ink her up first and pop her in the moon, because it's far easier. I'm going to do a balancing on some pods. It's far easier to line the pods up with the bottom of her feet as opposed to trying to balance the fairy on the pods. Okay, so taking the VersaFine, making sure she is completely covered. And then we're going to pop her down where we've made that lighter area, and then we'll bring the moon in after. So remembering this is watercolour card, so we need to just let that rest for a while. She's really, really detailed, this stamp. So we need to make sure we get all that lovely detail. So let the stamp just rest on the card, soak up the ink, and then you're almost guaranteed to get a really good impression. Okay. And there we go. Okay, so next up we need to find our lovely pods, and again we're going to ink up in the black, and then we're going to pop the top of that just over her feet so she's balancing right on the top there. So again, just let that rest a while. And now we're going to slightly angle the other one, and that's the beauty of these. You can actually sort of manipulate how you want them. You know, you can form them this way or that way. It stops it looking too repetitive, because you don't want everything all going up straight. You want a little bit of sort of how it would form naturally, I suppose. So I'm going to give that a little bit of a bend at the top. Now this one we need to get under her knee. And I think I've got that. There we go. So I'm going to grab a couple of other pods, and then I'm going to stamp around, just giving a few different heights. Just trying to get it as natural looking as we can. There we go. Okay, so the next thing now, we're going to actually look at where we want to place the moon. So jig that around a bit, see where you want the moon to be. Now, it's really good to kind of spotlight your focal point, and that's why I'm using this mask. So I am literally going to pop it straight in the centre there. And then taking another colour, do dark denim. This is in our Elements. And then I'm grabbing a small stencil brush, and I'm going to work my way around the edge there. You can see I'm just swirling around and around and around. Now we don't want to go over the pods because the moon is at the back. So very carefully, I'm going to go in between the pods. And that will give you that illusion that the moon is actually behind, hopefully. Okay, let's carry on working with that. So the deeper colour that we go, the more contrast we get, the more atmospheric. So I'm adding a little bit more of an aura around, widening that area. Oops, slightly moved it. And I'm going to bring that depth down the side and up on this side. There we go. So you can see now how that really spotlights Eira. I'm going to put a darker colour down here, so I'm going to take one of our larger, this is our medium-sized stencil brush, and straight away that makes all the difference. So what we're doing, we're framing, pulling your eye into the centre there by adding this depth of colour around the edge. And again at the top there. I'm not going to do too much down that side because it's quite nice to have the light coming in somewhere. Now you can see that I'm literally just brushing the edge there, but be careful not to cover her wings. And again, it's all about light and contrast, and this makes the image look more three-dimensional. So build your colour up very, very gradually. Okay, so I've got my lovely Posca pencils here, and I'm going to pick a couple of colours and start colouring in. Now I'm just rolling this, making sure that that colour is completely clean before I start. And you can see how that brings her to life, adding that little bit of colour. And the Posca pencils are great for this because they're completely opaque. They'll go over the top. They're very waxy. You need to be very careful not to go over the black lines because it will lose its definition then. So try to keep within the black lines as much as you can anyway. Okay, so what colour shall we have her in? I think I might go pick up a little bit of this colour down here and pop that over the top. And again, I'm just swirling, swirling, swirling. And we can bring in darker colours afterwards to get the depth. It's going to be a little bit tricky for me to go in between the lines on this, so I'm going over the top. Okay, so I've got a darker colour here. Now because the light's coming in this side, so the shadow will hit the back of her hat and the back of her dress there. So that's where I'm bringing in that deeper colour. And then I'm going to go on to a soft grey, just to bring a little bit of shadow on her body as well. And you can start seeing how it looks more three-dimensional. So I need to bring in darker colour again. So best to do it gradually and build it up. I'm not going to put anything on her face, simply because it's so tiny. If we get that wrong, it's going to really change everything. So it's so delicate, that area. I am literally just going to leave it. I hope you can start seeing how it's starting to change. So what we'll do next is just highlight a couple of areas, but again, just be really careful with your white pens as well. I'm going to very, very softly and lightly bring in a little bit of that yellow. So there's a little bit of a glow behind her. And again, this all adds to spotlighting her. Okay, so let's bring some colour now to these pods. So we want them to stand out slightly. So I'm thinking, let's have a look, maybe we'll do a bit of an orange because they're very dark. And we're going to struggle to get colour down the bottom, but this is where these pencils are really good because they will still go over dark colour. It won't be as bright, but you'll still get that sense of colour. And do them slightly stronger at the bottom there. Okay. So now we need to think about highlights. So I'm going to grab my Posca. I'm going to grab my black glaze pen, my white Posca. Also going to grab my Wink of Stella for her wings as well. So step by step. Okay, so what I'm going to do is pop some Posca down on the side here. Now because the nib on this, I mean it is a fine nib, but you can see the area that I've got to paint and it's super, super fine. So we need a fine paintbrush, a little bit of water, some of the Posca. Now by adding the water it will stay fluid. So I'm literally just touching the edge. We don't want it to look like a hard white line. I want it to look very delicate, so we'll just do it gradually. I might just do a little on her face. There we go. And this time I'm going to highlight the moon even more. I'm going to go around the edge. Now if you don't feel confident to actually draw that line, a great way is to just dot really, really closely together with a little bit more control. It still looks really effective. Or if you're feeling confident, very, very lightly, remembering to rest your hand on the side there. And that will just steady your hand. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to use the Posca pen now, just to highlight these pods on the one side, working the way around the pattern on the pod so that the black stands out. And then I'm going to follow the stem. So when you're doing things like this, I'm literally holding my breath, so I'm not speaking whilst I'm drawing. You just need a really good sort of steady hand. Okay, so I've got my black glaze pen here. Now you have to be, again, really, really careful with this. We just want to add a little bit of shadow at the back of her. So test it first. Make sure that, you know, it's running really nicely. And then we're going to pop that at the back of her. Touch on her wings, a little on the back of her neck, and again on the back of her hat. So again, you've got the depth at the back and the light source coming from this side. We can do the same with the pods. This black glaze pen is such a nice solid black. It's obviously slightly shiny, although you don't really notice the shine on it. Okay, we have the Wink of Stella, and I'm just going to pop that over the top of her wings and a little on her hair. Might actually do a little over the top of her dress and our hat. Adds a tiny, tiny amount of sparkle. And you know what? I might even put it over the pods. It's so subtle, that you can afford to go over a lot of things without it looking out of place. Okay, so I'm feeling that this top bit here is a little bit empty, so I am actually going to stamp a few of the pods at the top there. Now this is the thing, sometimes we finish the card, or we feel like we've finished the card, and we think, do you know what, it just needs a little bit of something. So keep looking at it, and don't be frightened to add a few finishing touches, as long as it's not too heavy, because we don't want to take anything away from that focal point. So I'm going to turn that upside down. I'm going to use the Twilight, which is a slightly lighter colour than black. And then ink up. And then I'm going to just pop just a couple down. Give that a good press. Okay. And I'm going to go a little bit higher again. And there we go. Okay, so let's move on. Okay, so I have some stickles. I'm going to just follow the stem. Literally just put tiny amounts on the edge there, following where I've highlighted. And again, that little bit of sparkle. This looks like the light is just literally just kissing one side. Now, if you're unsure about putting it on the fairy, just grab a little bit of a brush and paint a little bit on. And you can see that lovely little bit of sparkle just on the edge there. In fact, we're going to pop a little bit. I don't want loads. just get that lovely even pressure and drag it around the edge. And we're going to pop a little bit on her wings, just at the top bit of her wing, not over the whole thing. Glitter is really good in small doses, otherwise it can just completely take over your card. Right, we're nearly finished. I'm going to grab my Posca pen now, and then grab a brush, and we're literally just going to add a little bit just down the one side of the card. And it just adds a little bit of magic down that one side. And there we go, guys. I hope that you've enjoyed today's demo as much as I have. Really enjoyed that. It takes you through that whole process, and you're faced with a blank white card, and how you can actually bring it to life just with a few stamps and a little bit of colour, a little bit of patience, and there we go. Thank you so much, guys, for joining me today. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I will see you soon. Bye for now.